There are stories that explain the past, then there are stories that explain the present. The Silk Road was not just an ancient route, it was the first global system of power, and no one told you that in school. While textbooks talk about trade, the truth is more uncomfortable. Human history has always been shaped by those who controlled the path, not by what is being transported. Think about it. When you control routes, you control wealth. When you control wealth, you control decisions. And when you control decisions, you control people. Contradictory. Maybe, but that is how empires are built. And the most curious part is that none of this stayed in the past. Today, countries do the same thing. They just replaced caravans with fiber optic cables, dirt roads with infrastructure, and silk with data. Whoever controls the connections controls the game. Whoever depends on them obeys. Most people believe history is driven by wars. But the truth is different. The world is driven by roots. Stay with me until the end, because you are about to discover how an ancient road shaped the economy, destroyed empires, and is being reactivated right now, right in front of your eyes. The Silk Road history was not just a trade route. It was the first version of an internet created by humans. Long before submarine cables or satellites existed, caravans crossed deserts and mountains carrying something far more powerful than gold. Information. Whoever traveled along that path did not transport only goods. They carried ideas, beliefs, technologies, and rumors capable of toppling kings. It was as if every step worked like a data transmission between entire civilizations. Think about that for a moment. Today you unlock your phone, tap a screen, and access the world. 2,000 years ago, all of that happened on the back of camels. While an army needed months to occupy a territory, an idea took only weeks to cross continents. Ideas move faster than swords. It changes everything. And here is a detail almost no one talks about. Those who controlled information controlled power. Sounds familiar, right? Today, companies control data. Back then, merchants controlled routes. Imagine a trader arriving in a city with fresh news about wars, opportunities, and spice prices. He had more power than many generals. Information is currency. It always has been. When we look at how the world works today, social networks, real-time package tracking, companies competing for data, we realize the logic is the same. When people connect, possibilities emerge. The Silk Road history had already shown this centuries ago. Those who create paths prosper. Those who isolate themselves get left behind. It is fascinating how something so ancient still explains so much about the present, and maybe even about the future. Silk was not just fabric, it was a symbol. Whoever wore silk displayed wealth and authority without saying a word. While wool was practical and cotton was common, silk felt unreal, light, shiny, almost otherworldly. In Rome, senators complained that it corrupted morality, but the truth is simple. It enchanted people. The secret of its production was fiercely guarded by China. No other country knew how to create that perfect shine, and that turned the material into an economic monopoly. They controlled everything from the silkworm to the trade of the fibers. Having the secret was like owning the source code of the most desired product in the world. Rome spent fortunes importing silk and could not stop. It became a diplomatic weapon. Rulers offered silk to seal agreements and influence decisions. When a gift is capable of shifting political alliances, it stops being a gift. It becomes strategy. If that insight made you think, leave a comment saying it makes sense. This logic is still alive today. Luxury brands use the same principle. Desire plus scarcity equals power. When something is hard to obtain, it becomes irresistible. Silk was the first global example of that. Once you understand the game, you stop being a consumer and start acting like a strategist. If you want to learn more, subscribe so you do not miss the next chapters. Controlling the Silk Road was like holding the power to manage global traffic. Except what circulated was not cars, it was wealth. Every section of the route was a source of profit: fees, tolls, taxes. It was common for small cities to become rich overnight simply because they were in the right place. Geographic positioning was destiny. But whenever money flows, competition follows. Empires began to realize they did not need to conquer land to gain power. They just needed to control the passage. It was a quiet, global power struggle. Those who protected the route collected payment. Those who collected payment became wealthy. Those who became wealthy gained influence. It was almost like a game of chess played in the middle of the desert. The competition was so intense that many armies did not exist to conquer cities, but to protect caravans. Security became a business. If a section became dangerous, merchants simply changed the route, and the city lost its source of income. It is fascinating how sometimes the strongest army does not win. The flow of commerce does, and who truly made the rules? The merchants, with maps in their minds and contacts at every border. They knew where opportunities were long before rulers did. They had the information, and whoever controls information decides what matters and where the money goes. Imagine walking for weeks through a silent desert and suddenly seeing lights, fragrances, and voices in dozens of different languages. That is how Samarkand, Bukhara, and Kashgar appeared to anyone traveling along the ancient trade routes. They looked like mirages, except they were real. A physical rest and a cultural shock at the same time. These oases were not just technical stops, they were meeting points between worlds. A Chinese merchant could negotiate with a Persian, while an Arab traveler watched and learned new trading techniques. In a single bazaar, coins changed hands, but ideas changed destinies. The more diverse the travelers were, the more these cities prospered. Artists absorbed foreign styles and created new aesthetics. Astronomers studied maps brought by caravans. Monks, scientists, and philosophers exchanged knowledge the same way people exchanged goods. Every arrival brought something new. Every departure carried innovation. The secret of these cities was simple. They understood that prosperity is born when people meet. They did not need large armies because they had something far more valuable: influence. Where people connected, movement appeared. Where movement appeared, wealth followed. They had no crowns and no armies, yet they moved entire empires. The nomadic merchants were the true architects of the Silk Road. Without them, nothing happened. They knew secret trails, hidden water sources, and even which rulers could be trusted. While empires fought over territories, they fought over information, and they won. These caravan leaders could negotiate in multiple languages, adjust prices according to local culture, and understand which products had the highest value in each region. They were natural strategists. A common fabric in one city could become luxury thousands of miles away. They knew where desire existed before the consumer did. The most impressive part? They did all of it without printed maps. Every detail of geography lived in their memory: mountains, dunes, hostile tribes, and even hidden waterholes. Today, we use GPS. They used instinct, star reading, and stories passed from one traveler to another. And because they were so essential, these merchants became politically influential. Rulers asked them for advice, tried to buy their loyalty, and offered privileges to ensure their caravans passed through their territory. When you understand the path, you become indispensable. For centuries, China seemed unbeatable. It was the only place on the planet capable of producing silk. No other empire could figure out how to turn those shimmering cocoons into fabric. That is how they built one of the greatest hidden empires in history. An empire based not on military force, but on industrial secrecy. But the secret began to leak when two monks were sent by the Byzantine Empire. They did not carry weapons or soldiers. They carried strategy. They hid silkworm cocoons inside hollow walking sticks and traveled thousands of miles until they reached Constantinople. It sounds like a movie scene, yet it is recorded in the chronicles of the historian Procopius. When the cocoons arrived in Europe, everything changed. The silk monopoly came to an end, and what had once been exclusive started being produced in new places. It was the end of one of the greatest economic privileges of the ancient world. A broken monopoly means power being redistributed. This episode reveals something important. Empires do not fall only through wars. Sometimes all it takes is a secret being shared at the right moment. When information changes hands, the map changes with it. And the world was about to discover even more transformative inventions. 3 things traveled along the Silk Road and changed everything: paper, the compass, and gunpowder. Each one left the East as a simple invention and reached the West as a revolution. Paper allowed knowledge to be recorded. The compass allowed navigation without depending on the stars. Gunpowder completely changed the concept of war. 3 objects, 3 new worlds. Before paper, texts were carved into stone, bamboo, or parchment, all expensive, heavy, and difficult to transport. When paper began to circulate, the idea of storing knowledge became accessible. More books, more reading, more learning. Today, any ebook on your phone exists only because paper once crossed the deserts. The compass was the GPS of the ancient world. It allowed sailors to explore the seas without fear of getting lost. It turned navigation into strategy. Merchants discovered new routes, new markets, and new cultures. And every time a new route appeared, one city grew while another disappeared. As for gunpowder, it was the moment when commerce met conflict. Before it, castles were nearly invincible. After it, walls became decoration. A single spark changed centuries of warfare. And that was not the only impact, because as new inventions spread around the world, the Silk Road became more valuable and more competitive. The same network that spread innovation also carried risks. When merchants traveled along the Silk Road, they were not transporting only silk, spices, and knowledge. They carried something invisible. Around 1347, travelers and ships began bringing to Europe an unknown microorganism that would later be identified as Yersinia pestis. According to records from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention (CDC), this bacterium was responsible for the Black Death, one of the greatest health catastrophes in history. Commercial expansion made the movement of people, animals, and goods easier. Along with them came contaminated fleas traveling hidden in fabrics, grain sacks, and even in the fur of camels and rats transported by caravans. The trade routes accelerated not only wealth but also contamination. A path that connected continents ended up connecting the disease as well. In less than 5 years, the illness reached dozens of cities. Documents from the European Center for Disease Prevention and Control (ECDC) estimate that between 30% and 60% of the European population died. But it is important to understand that no one spread it on purpose. There was complete ignorance about hygiene, bacteria, and transmission. People simply followed trade routes, as they had always done. This period reveals something essential. Everything that connects us can also expose us. The Silk Road accelerated progress, but it also accelerated unexpected consequences. Even so, trade continued, because the world had already understood that connection is more valuable than isolation. And that idea would open the door to a new change that would come by sea. For centuries, the Silk Road dominated international trade. But as nautical technology evolved, sailing stopped being an act of faith and became a strategy. Sea routes became faster, safer, and most importantly, cheaper. One ship carrying hundreds of tons replaced dozens of caravans crossing deserts. The math was simple: less risk, more profit. When the Portuguese figured out how to sail around Africa and reach Asia by sea, everything changed. Europe realized it could eliminate tolls, taxes, and intermediaries from the land route. Entire governments began financing maritime expeditions. It was a race to find new commercial pathways. As sea travel grew, oasis cities began to lose relevance. Without caravans, there was no trade. Without trade, there was no wealth. once vibrant centers became silent ruins in the middle of the desert. The route that once changed the world started to disappear, not because of war, but because of economic efficiency. But the end of the land route did not mean the end of its impact. Its logic, connecting countries and moving wealth, remained alive. And one country, centuries later, would understand it clearly enough to try to make the world bend once again to that same concept. Centuries later, the route came back to life, only now much more ambitious. China realized it did not need to go to war to expand its influence. It only needed to rebuild connections. This gave rise to the Belt and Road Initiative, a trillion-dollar project linking ports, railways, highways, and data cables across the world. The idea is simple. If you control the path, you control the flow. Today, this new route does not carry only goods, it carries dependency. Countries that receive investments become reliant on China for infrastructure, logistics, and credit. That is where the concept of geopolitical control comes in, when a country cannot refuse your help. It also cannot refuse your influence. Connection becomes power. The most impressive part is that the new route is not only on the ground, it is also in the cloud. Submarine cables, satellites, smart ports, and digital systems. Physical trade and digital control move together. Whoever controls data controls decisions. Whoever controls decisions controls the future. History reveals a clear pattern. Those who build the paths shape the destiny. First, it was silk, then spices. Now, infrastructure and data. The route changed form, but not purpose. And that leads to an inevitable question. Who truly rules the world? The one who carries the product, or the one who defines the path? After all of this, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Power was never in the merchandise, it was in the path. Now think about your own life. Are you creating your own paths, or just following the paths of others? If this video gave you an insight, comment with one word: root. And if you want to keep learning stories that reveal what lies behind power, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Your next path starts here.